Johnny, when it comes to betting baseball, it is always important to do it legally. And here on College Baseball Done Better, we certainly do it legally. There are some people out there who do it illegally, and they're in trouble. Welcome to College Baseball Done Better. I'm Greg Larnerd, along with my co-host, Johnny VTV. Oh, give me a little peace sign today. Okay, I see you.
Mm-hmm.
What's up, bro?
What's up, man? How you doing? Yeah, this is a wild weekend here. Outside of just the news, what broke this week, this is really becoming important for a lot of teams, the bubble teams, the fringe teams that want to really make a statement and solidify themselves into the field of 64, and some of the teams that might be on their way out. We only have a few more weeks until the conference tournaments start up, and all these games really start to magnify that much more over the next couple of weeks. So let's get into it, bro. I'm super excited.
All right, Johnny, there's a story going on right now in college baseball that we have to start with. It's Brad Bohannon of the Alabama Crimson Tide, the baseball coach. He's out of there. He's fired, obviously, allegedly got caught up in some gambling, some different things that were happening, whether it was him giving somebody picks to put in for himself or giving somebody that, I don't know if it's a friend, a family member, somebody in need, a little insider information out there at the Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati. What do you think about this situation when it comes to betting and gambling? And again, I know we don't know a whole lot of the details, but from what we do know, tell us a little bit about your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, so initially from reading the reports early in the week, it just looked like it got flagged because somebody put a big money line bet on LSU, who were minus 245 favorites, with the number one pitcher in the country going, Paul Skeens, against the number one team, the LSU Tigers. And in addition to, I think, something of a parlay, not exactly sure what it was, and it took a big number, and that ultimately got flagged. And at first, I'm not thinking there's anything wrong with it. It's just, in general, college baseball is not a sport that sees a lot of handle overall. And maybe that was one of the reasons why, something that I read, and just based off common sense. To me, it doesn't really matter. There's no advantages. There's nothing that anybody can do. You're facing a guy who might be the number one pick off the board in Paul Skeens, who has been unbelievable, who's got a case to set the single season strikeout record. The guy is turned in one of the best pitching seasons in the history of college baseball. And then you combine that with the fact that LSU is the number one team they have been all year. That doesn't really raise any red flags. And, there's nothing anybody can do when you're competing against them. So the rumor was that Brad Bohannon scratched his Friday guy, who's not really a true Friday guy, and Luke Holman. Like, Luke Holman's solid, but he's not a guy that you would expect to compete with Paul Skeens. But I guess now the fact is, from what we're hearing, if Brad Bohannon had anything to do with calling somebody, giving him inside information, or having somebody put a bet in for him, obviously that's a no-no. We're not 100% sure yet. But what I do know, Ohio and New Jersey started to stop the halting on betting of Alabama baseball. And now I couldn't find any lines on the game from last night or even today anywhere. And, I'm in Connecticut, but I have people that are in different states. They couldn't find it either. And, I really wanted to bet the game last night. I'm glad I wasn't able to, because I would have bet Vanderbilt with all this stuff going on, which they got blown out. But, this is obviously very serious. You can't have coaches betting on baseball games, and Alabama just continues to get ransacked with scandals. But it seems like a baseball betting scandal, trumps like murder charges and stuff like that. But I would think, and I don't know this for a fact, I haven't spoken to anybody, it wouldn't surprise me to see Alabama get banned from the postseason this year, and maybe for a couple of years. It would really suck for the players, and they had nothing to do with it from what the report said. But, the NCAA hasn't really faced anything like this, at least in this sport, pretty much ever, at least in, this modern era. And I would imagine they want to make an example out of them. And that's what it might come down to in terms of banning them for the field of 64.
That's an interesting thought. I hadn't really thought about them getting a postseason ban, but one thing that I thought, I don't know if you thought this as well, but I thought it was a little apropos of that. the guy got caught at Great American Ballpark there in Cincinnati, where obviously Pete Rose was banned for life from baseball, for betting on baseball. So kind of apropos there that it happened there. It gave me a little chuckle behind closed doors. But yeah, as you saw up there a little while ago, Jared had put on that there were 4 states that were actually halting sports betting again with Alabama baseball. I think it was, you mentioned Ohio, Indiana, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania became the 4th state to halt Alabama baseball betting. So just an interesting time. This is probably not the first time, Johnny, that we're going to see something like this happen. Obviously they want to come down hard on him, so they make sure this doesn't happen anywhere else. But much like giving money, back in the day before all of the name, image, and likeness stuff, money was exchanged in hands, and people would do it quietly behind closed doors under the table. I assume stuff like this happens across the country, that they utilize their inside information. You hope it doesn't, but it wouldn't be surprising if something like this were going on. But you have to come down hard on Brad Bohannon here and the Alabama organization, like you're talking about, the program, to say, hey, you're not going to play in postseason this year and for the foreseeable future. Now, it's not quite the death penalty that UNLV got back in the day, but it's still going to be a harsh sentence, like you said, because they want to make sure, hey, we turn the faucet off on this thing. This is not going to happen again. And if it does, again, you're getting a harsh punishment.
Well, that's definitely a possibility, but it also comes down to how long has this been going on? This is most likely not the first time this has happened.
Yeah.
And, then it starts calling into the integrity of the game. And listen, Alabama's not one of the top teams in the country. They're not a team that's a real threat to win it all this year,
But they're
even
not
before
bad. I
this
mean, they're
happened.
30 and
They're not
31 and
bad.
15 now. I
They're
mean, they're a
probably going to
good
make
team.
the tournament, but they're not a real threat, to be honest. And, that's a little subjective, but I think ultimately here, it's interesting to see what's going to happen with Bama for the rest of the year. It's a solid baseball program, but at the end of the day, they weren't going to likely beat LSU with Paul Skeens on the mound. So whatever impact that they made, switching starters, to be honest, didn't really matter. This is every time Paul Skeens is on the mound, it's almost a lock that he wins, because he is right now the best pitcher in the country and one of the best pitchers in college baseball history.
Before we get into games and betting, and we'll move off this topic, but I want to tell you all about Fantasy Alarm All Sports subscription. Get an all pro access to Fantasy Alarm and unlock all features, including all fantasy football and betting content, plus the award-winning DFS playbook covering 10 different sports. That's a lot of sports. You get that for a limited time. Get all of this for 50% off for your first 6 months with promo code ALARM50. Again, that's ALARM50 at fantasyalarm.com. So get started with a free trial today. That's promo code ALARM50, ALARM50 at fantasyalarm.com. All right, Johnny, let's get into it. We'll stick in the SEC. We're going to go to the number 18 ranked Tennessee Volunteers, who have been on an absolute tear lately. They've won a ton of games in a row. Their favorite at the Georgia Bulldogs. The Bulldogs, though, been playing a good brand of baseball at home. They're not great this year, but they've been playing well at home. Talk me through this one. And Tennessee's been real bad on the road.
Yeah, Tennessee, as you mentioned, they are a team. I think they've only won maybe like 2 or 3 games on the road this year, if that. And it's been brutal. But we've seen the Volunteers start to come back to life these last couple of weeks. They swept Vandy in a huge series, and they found different ways to win against Mississippi State, who does have a pretty good offense. Now, they're drawing a really tough test in Georgia. Now, on paper, you would think, okay, Tennessee should sweep this series. I think Tennessee's on upset alert, not only today, but the rest of the weekend. I do think Georgia probably takes one. They play much better at home, but they also have a really good offense. They're led by a guy who would be freshman of the year if Ethan Petrie didn't exist, by the name of Charlie Condon. The guy's been hitting over 440 for the better part of the season. He's a guy who might have 25 home runs. This kid, Charlie Condon. And there's definitely a path for Georgia to take down Tennessee tonight and at some point throughout the weekend. But I mean, I personally haven't played anything single on the board tonight, just because I want to see how it pans out. But I would still give the edge to the Volunteers tonight, even at a minus 180 price. It has come down a little bit. There's been some steam from people I know that have taken Georgia. And I think Tennessee's on the cusp of being, we're back. I don't officially put it there yet, but the Volunteers are still in a position here where for the rest of the season, they have an outside chance to move up the board and possibly host a region. That's something that really was expected of them preseason. And throughout the year, after they were just losing series after series, it kind of been an afterthought, like they might not even make the tournament. So every series from now on is of critical importance for this Tennessee team. And I think they get off to a good start tonight. Friday night with Andrew Lindsay, who's settling into that role really nicely. He's been throwing really well. And the fact is we're probably going to be able to see Chase Burns tonight, a guy who was an elite starter last year, a guy who I think is probably top 5 capability off the board in 2024. He's now pitching in that utility role. And they've kind of been setting him up as the closer in certain capacities, and he's been killing it. And
Yeah.
I think for that reason, Tennessee takes the series and they take tonight. Georgia's struggles really rely on their bullpen. So if Tennessee can get to that bullpen early, drain a couple of their arms, it's going to set them up really nicely for the rest of the weekend. And I'm not really impressed by the starting pitching that Georgia has. They have a good starter on Saturday by the name of Charlie Goldstein going against our boy Dolly. So we could look at that, after we find out the result of today. But my purpose is I would take the Volunteers today in game 1. But I do think Georgia will take one game. Which one, I don't know.
Yeah, if the Vols do want to go and try to host a regional, they have to turn around that 1-9 record away from Lindsey Nelson Stadium. That's not good. They got to start tonight, and they got to do it in Athens, Georgia. Let's continue to roll here. Let's go to the Oklahoma Sooners at the West Virginia Mountaineers.
Yeah, West Virginia is one of my favorite plays of the day. I grabbed it at -140, and I tweeted out, and just on my podcast Breaking Bet an hour ago, I was giving them out, and it's moved $35 on the money line, which just goes to show people are taking an interest in the Mountaineers. This West Virginia team is very appealing. It's not a team that has a lot of flash outside of a couple of players. Their superstar, J.J. Weatherholt, has been one of the best offensive players in the country this year. He's a guy who's probably going to be a top 10 pick next year. He's an infielder, primarily second base, a little bit of third base. And he really carries the wagon for this Mountaineers team. But aside from that, they're getting really good performances from their pitchers. They're throwing Ben Hampton, the lefty, tonight against the Sooners, who in their own regard are starting to heat up a little bit. But, they're nothing like the team that we saw last year that made the College World Series final and lost it to Ole Miss. I personally would pencil in West Virginia almost automatically tomorrow with Blaine Traxel going. Blaine Traxel is a guy that many people haven't heard of. He has 5 complete games on the year. That is something that is very rare. Not even Paul Skeens has more than like 1 or 2. So if West Virginia can take today, I'm pretty sure that they're going to be en route to a sweep, because I would back them Saturday as well. West Virginia is the better team. Oklahoma doesn't have the firepower this year to keep up with this team. And, I would look out for this Mountaineer squad come June, because wouldn't be surprised to see them not only win the regional, but possibly win the super regional and be one of those kind of dark horse teams that makes the College World Series. They're currently 100-1 on the futures market. There's worse teams to get involved with, because I think West Virginia could actually make a deep run if J.J. Weatherholt and this pitching keep playing to the level that they have been.
Yeah, Traxel's been really good. The one thing I think you'd have to guard against, as I'm looking up some of their stats, is both of these guys, between Traxel and Hampton, they're not big strikeout guys. So you have to hope that the West Virginia defense plays well, because if the Sooners put it in play, they start kicking the ball around. That's something that obviously has to go into your thought process there. But hopefully the defense will be good for West Virginia. Let's go back to the SEC. The number 1 team in the nation, the LSU Tigers, will take on the Auburn Tigers. Battle of the Tigers here. What do you think about this one? Is it just another roll through Paul Skeens, just throw him in a parlay and forget about it?
Yep. I'm not a big proponent in laying a big number, but if you're ever going to lay this kind of a number on somebody, it's LSU with Paul Skeens on the mound. This guy has just been unreal. He's got double-digit strikeouts in every game this year, except for the one in South Carolina where he had 8 in 3 innings because of a bad weather delay. We're going to see Skeens probably notch over 200 Ks if LSU makes a deep run this year. This kid is it's strange, because we mentioned it last week. LSU might be the first team ever to have teammates go back-to-back 1 and 2 in the MLB draft history, with Skeens and Dylan Cruz. So for me, LSU goes in a parlay tonight. I don't really have much fear that they're going to lose to Auburn. I don't think Auburn pulls off two big upsets in a row after downing South Carolina a week ago. LSU would go really great with Wake Forest. That's probably like a minus 135 parlay. To me, that's still really good. If you want to get a little wild, maybe throw Texas in there for like a plus 150 number, or Stanford, who we're going to get to in a little bit. But I think LSU en route to a nice win here behind number one Paul Skeens. And, we want this LSU team to keep winning. We want the microscope. We want the expectations to continue to be on them, because my Wake Forest Demon Deacons, to me, they are the best team in all of college baseball. And I want people to just be a little bit quiet on them and let LSU have all the pomp and all the circumstance.
And I think we saw in that game against, the games against Arkansas, in which they, kind of came back on that Friday night. That again, what worries you about LSU, as it does many other people who follow that program, is their bullpen's just not very good.
Nope. Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
So we'll figure that out. You mentioned getting crazy. It is Cinco de Mayo today, so maybe somebody will get a little wild, a little crazy. You got any big plans for tonight?
I'm probably going to do what I did last year. Just take a couple margarita pictures to the face and live to fight with the consequences tomorrow morning.
There you go. Love to hear it. Love to hear it. All right, let's continue on here. Let's stick in the SEC and let's talk about the number 4 Florida Gators. They'll travel in conference to the Texas A&M Aggies. Any snags here for the Gators, or should they be on upset alert?
Not tonight. Florida Gators, they avoided temptation to be upset last week against Mizzou. They had 3 very impressive performances in different fashions, and Florida was somebody I gave it at minus 135. So a little bit of steam coming on them now, and I imagine they'd probably close more to like minus 150 towards game time. Brandon Sproat's a guy who's been very inconsistent. When he's at his best, he pitches like one of the top 7 guys in the country. But there's times where he just doesn't have it. And of course, that could happen any given night. Texas A&M does have a good offense. They're a team that's led by a guy named Jack Moss, who is one of the best pure hitters in the NCAA. They have an up-and-coming freshman by the name of Jay Slavalette. There's a lot of power in this Aggie lineup, but I just don't buy their starter, Nathan Detmer. I like him, but he's another guy you just can never string consistent performances of high quality together. He did come on strong last year in June when it came time for Texas A&M to make a run to the Final Four of the College World Series, but this is not a guy who's been pitching anywhere to that capability. He's got over a 6 ERA, and you're going against the Florida Gators lineup that just has so much firepower. You got Jack Caglione, who's got 26 home runs on the year. He's well within his range to not only shatter Ivan Melendez's record set last year of 33. I think he's probably going to get 40. I just don't know if I see Florida losing game 1. I think after a bad sweep against South Carolina, Florida is dialed in here to really maybe run the table the rest of the way. I don't see the Gators losing tonight. I think minus 140 is one of my best plays of the day.
Well, it is best ball season here, Johnny, and we're helping you draft winning teams on Fantasy Alarm and also on the Bettor Sports Network. Check out the first best ball fantasy football draft featuring some of our top analysts like Howard Bender, Andrew Cooper, Britt Flynn, Corey Parson, and so many more names. Now playing on YouTube at Fantasy Alarm and Bettor Sports Network. Learn winning draft strategies and find out which players you need to have on your fantasy football teams this season. Get in the huddle and start drafting best ball teams of your own on Underdog Fantasy. Visit fantasyalarm.com/underdog fantasy and use promo code Fantasy Alarm when signing up to receive a 100% deposit match up to $100. Again, use promo code Fantasy Alarm. All right, let's finish out a couple more games here. I know you said you wanted to talk about the Stanford Cardinals. Go ahead, talk to us about them. They're at the number 20 team in the nation, the Arizona State Sun Devils.
Yeah, listen, Arizona State being number 20 is a little bizarre here. They have an RPI of 44. They haven't really beaten a lot of elite teams, so they would prove their worth a little bit if they can take a series from Stanford. And listen, you know me, I don't like Stanford. I don't like Pac-12 baseball. I think they're all a bunch of frauds that don't really have much of a chance to win anything serious. But in certain matchups, I have to take advantage, and that is almost always the case on a Friday night with Stanford. behind Quinn Matthews. Quinn Matthews has been one of the best arms in the entire nation this year. This is a guy who's had 5 straight performances of at least 10 strikeouts. He's probably been the best left-handed pitcher in the entire nation this season. I think this is a guy who might be able to sneak his way into the first round. He's been an absolute workhorse. He threw 120 pitches last time out against UCLA. This is a guy who I pretty much always want to back because he's legit, man. In a conference where there's not a lot of great pitchers, he stands head and shoulders above the rest. And minus 150 is a little short of a price here, and I think Stanford should be more in the minus 175 range. Give me Stanford. Give me Quinn Matthews, minus 150 at a very overrated number 20 Arizona State Sun Devils, who should not be in the top 25.
All right, our final game we wanted to touch on today, Johnny, was South Alabama. We're going to go to the Fun Belt. South Alabama, they're on the plus line right now. They're the underdogs at the Southern Miss Golden Eagles. Do you smell an upset brewing here with the Jags, or the Golden Eagles going to protect home turf?
So this is another one I gave out. I gave out Southern Miss at minus 155, and there's simply one reason. His name is Tanner Hall. He came in as one of the best arms preseason in the country. This is a guy who still could be a first rounder potentially. He hasn't had a great year, but his not great year is still resulted in a sub-3 ERA. He has a couple stinkers every now and then. It's definitely on the table, but I think ultimately here Southern Miss is a little short in price, even still after it moved. South Alabama is a team that's barely 500. They're not one of these elite mid-major programs. And even though I don't like Southern Miss, and I don't think they're a great team by any stretch of the imagination, they still do a lot of damage behind Tanner Hall. This is a guy who could go give you 6-7 innings of one-run ball, and that's what I'm expecting against a Jaguars team that really doesn't scare me at all. And Southern Miss should be on the right side of this contest here, hopefully behind a guy who has been a top 12 arm in the nation this year, Tanner Hall.
Yeah, it was like Aaron Rodgers said a couple of years ago, my down years are real career years for some, and that's where we're at with Tanner Hall right now. So it's going to be interesting to see. Yeah, that South Alabama squad, they're very, very average. So it'll be real interesting to see as well. And did you want to talk about South Carolina?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're in Kentucky this weekend. We got Churchill
right.
Downs. We got the Kentucky Derby, which like I've always wanted to go to, and I just haven't pulled the trigger on it. I need a group though. You got to go to the Derby with a group, bro.
Well, let's go
dress up to
next
the
year.
nines.
Let's go
next year.
Next year, let's go. I'm in. I'd love to go.
I'm in. Let's get a squad. Let's go to Kentucky for the Derby. Churchill Downs. We'll listen to Jack Harlow Drake's song, which they did at the Derby last year, which is pretty sick. But here we have the South Carolina Gamecocks. We're coming off a brutal upset series against the Auburn Tigers last weekend. And this is something that I've mentioned. The Gamecocks have a very bad habit, especially their pitchers, of just falling flat and no-showing against inferior opponents. When it comes time to play the big boys, the LSUs, the Floridas, they show up. And that's what you want, for a team that is supposed to be making a deep run. But the issue is they kind of just go through the motions in these kind of contests. Kentucky is a team that peaked a little bit too early. They're on their way down. They're on their way, possibly to maybe being a 2 or even number 3 seed if they keep stacking up series losses. This is a team that spent a lot of time in the top 25. And, I hate to do it, given this weekend at the Derby with Kentucky playing at home, but I think South Carolina tonight is the side. This is a line that has also moved out. It was the Gamecocks at minus 135, now minus 145. Will Sanders will not have 2 bad starts in a row. I think the Gamecocks take out their frustrations from last week onto Kentucky, and they need to also solidify themselves as a top 8 seed. It's most likely that they will be hosting a regional and a super regional if they make it to that point. But, you still don't want to go into the conference tournament and the end of May playing bad baseball. This is the time where you want to start playing your best. And there's no better spot for South Carolina than get off to a good start, take game 1, en route to a possible sweep of the Kentucky Wildcats at the beginning of May on Cinco de Mayo.
So you and Kentucky have a lot in common, right? Peaking a little too early?
Maybe, possibly. I can't
kidding.
give you a definite answer on that one.
You still got that baby face, bro.
So, yeah, I always get questioned about that. So, like, people always ask me how old I am. When I tell them, they're like, really? I thought you were like 21, 22. I bet if I if I was an actor, I would be very heavily typecasted in like a high school role. I'd be in like Euphoria or like a 21 Jump Street remake or something like that. I just it's really funny because I could pass for a high school student. People ask me how old I am, and when I tell them I'm almost 30, they're like, "Really? I thought you were like, maybe 17 or 18." I was like, "Yeah, well, I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm old. I'm washed up."
you'd be like one of the high school students. I'd be like one of the teachers, and we're
You know
like
what's weird?
4 years apart.
You know what's weird? We're getting to the age now where we're pretty much older than most of like professional athletes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
like
about that
if you
sometimes.
think about it, you put me and like Greek Freak next to each other. When I met him, like he's huge. He's a gigantic human being. Or like Joel Embiid or uh any one of these professional athletes being taken, you would think that they're a lot older than me. Meanwhile, they were born way after the original Space Jam, not this crap remake with LeBron, but I'm talking about the one with Michael Jordan. Like they were born in the 2000s. They're children.
Yeah,
Like, isn't that insane?
it's nuts.
They weren't even alive when Rush Hour 1 came
Oh
out.
my
Like, what does
gosh.
that tell? What does that say about?
It says we're getting old, and they're
It does.
literally babies. You just have the baby face, and they're actual babies. But it works
Yeah,
for you, dude. It works
it's
for you.
it does. It does work for me.
Find him on Twitter, as it says, at Johnny_Johnny VTV. For me, it's at Greg Larnerd. And of course, for the Better Sports Network, at Better Network on Twitter, Instagram, the whole thing. Johnny, enjoy your Cinco de Drinko today. Enjoy the margaritas. Be safe. Have a great time. Hopefully, you win us some money this weekend.
Hope so, man. Real quick before we log off here, frozen or straight up margaritas on the rocks?
I like both, but if you had to ask, if I had to give me one or the other, I'll take frozen.
I had that same debate here. I'm a frozen guy, man. I'm looking for some straight frozen margaritas today. Maybe some strawberry. If we're
Yep.
getting frisky, we'll do a little
Fruity.
watermelon. Try a little bit different flavors because we got some great mixologists up here in Stam Vegas putting together some fire margaritas, maybe some nachos, little burrito, dealer's choice. I don't really know, but today's going to be a good one, bro. And you know what? Maybe we'll pay the price tomorrow morning, but today only happens once a year, and I want to live it up to the.
That's fine. Win some bets tonight, and it'll be well worth it tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Have a great weekend. Enjoy it, and we'll see you next time right here on College Baseball Better. Also, thanks to Jared Moore behind the scenes. As always, my man, can't do it without you. We'll see you next week on College Baseball Better.